Don't you hate it when you sit down on a warm toilet seat? So this episode I'm calling It's Tough Being the Exception and Not the Rule. House of Pain is in effect, y'all. Little House of Pain reference there. I always love a group that has lines like, I'm smacking the hoe. Today we're going to talk about, oh God, this is the thing. This is the ultimate subject du jour because it seems to never go away. And we're talking about the myth, and I'm going to call it a myth because it definitely is, the myth of white privilege. I get into conversations, endless conversations. Like some of the short-lived Facebook friendships that I've had have been with people who just believe in systemic prejudice for their particular group, be it lesbian, be it black, be it mixed, and a lot of times not even black people. It's interesting. When I hear about it, I hear about it in a very this is I guess what Christina Hoff Sommers would call the vocal minority. The very loud, small little group at the edge of the world that is screaming with bullhorns and practicing techniques of violence or something, the kind of stuff that would make Gandhi and Martin Luther King just vomit profusely from their graves as they're spinning like crazy. I just wanted to give everyone like an idea of the life that I knew, that was given to me because of the color of my skin, the privilege that I enjoyed. I've hinted, I've referred to it on occasion in past episodes. Basically, grew up poor. My mother had no money. She was a single mother. I would say by necessity. I'm not. Because she was always looking to trap a man. In some kind of a situation. She once told me that she married a guy just because she thought he was rich. That was just her life. She wasn't making any money. She was certified, but not registered at the time. Or and being poor in the 70s was a big deal because there was an economic upheaval. We had a horrible recession that no one wanted to admit was a depression, and we often went without food. I mean, payday was a big day in the house because we could at least get some food. Even then, though, my mother was still, altruistic. She helped other people less fortunate than her because there were a lot of people less fortunate than her. Again, it was the 70s, and this was me growing up as a child. It was very rare and far between that McDonald's was an option. McDonald's was considered a once in a blue moon treat. Going to a restaurant was considered that. Things got better for her in the 80s, but not all that well. I mean, I think at our peak, our financial peak, whatever, the comfort level, she was making $30,000 a year in 1986, and that was considered a big deal. A lot of people didn't make money. And because of it, we lived in poor neighborhoods, generally around other minorities, mainly black kids. I remember growing up all the time, black kids, and we lived in, I was born in Cincinnati, and we moved to Philadelphia in 1979, I want to say. And for a little while, she had no money because she had no job, so she had to find a job. So we lived with some very nice people in South Philadelphia until we got our own apartment. And the apartment had rats. I remember it having rats. And the apartment didn't allow cats. They allowed rats, but not cats. It's interesting. Ceiling fell in on us. We were looking up at a starry sky one night, and it took a little while for the landlord to actually do anything about it. And then after that, her fortune grew a little bit, but she wasn't making good money still. So, we moved to Tennessee for a year. We had a higher quality of life, I guess, because nobody cared about living in Tennessee at the time. And that was my first dose of, I guess, racism, like good old-fashioned Southern racism where they didn't mind using the N-word or something like that. And they would just say it as a means of identification. The thing about the racism is not about calling people names. It's about identifying them as the source of your problems and blaming an entire group for that. Kind of like, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's more like ethnocentrism. That's more the correct definition of the word. World War II or Hitler selecting an entire group for extermination is kind of a ethnocentricist move, if you will. And then, getting the rest of Germany on board with that line of thinking. But there was systemic anti-Semitism going on at the time because they were the shopkeepers, they were the business owners, they were the people who were doing very well financially while everyone else around them. It's all about economics. That's where it goes, where it ultimately comes from, is economics. But anyway, living down south for a year, it can be very disconcerting for a Yankee boy such as myself to hear people use the kind of language they did. But it's funny because I don't think they meant to be mean. This is just how they classify them. And a lot of people are like that too. Irish and Italians, my God, you should hear the way they talk when they're surrounded only by their own. Brave words, and then they go out there into the city and get on the train and are scared half to death by 3 black teenagers or whatever. But racism is just sort of a natural process. It's part of animal biology, really. This is why animals fight other animals, because they are not those animals. You are either friend or food. This is what we've decided, and I guess the system still works. Where like a lot of environmentalists want you to think that you're personally destroying a species of turtle or a species of hyena. It's actually more often than not them that are causing their own destruction. So we're still growing up poor, no money. My mother had to work nights. She couldn't afford a babysitter either. But the rent was so low, and again a higher quality of life. But you did need a car, of course. And that was in Lebanon, Tennessee, which is a few miles outside of Nashville. And we lived there for a year, went back up to Philadelphia. We didn't really like it down there, I guess. She had relations living down there, and some of them weren't particularly nice people, and some of them were. So we moved back up to Philly. She winds up making good money. And then she starts to really kind of lose her mind, and we move up to New York. And, we moved in February of 1988. Evicted by December 11th of 1988. We didn't even last a full year in New York without getting evicted because she lost her job. She was getting she got a high-paying job, and then lost the job due to her own either behavior or something else. She tried being a salesperson at some kind of a chain of electronic stores. That didn't work out because it's all commission, and really, if you need it that badly, you're not going to do very well. So we were homeless for a little under 2 years, from December. And, it was like first Christmas in New York. We were homeless. I had to live in a residential hotel that was run by Vietnamese people, the Kenmore Hotel, where we were surrounded by crackheads and hookers and everything, and just had to live like that. And in any other situation, it's weird. My wife tells me, and a few other people do, in any other situation, I would have been given up as a ward of the state. I would have been taken away, but she kept it a secret, essentially. So I went to high school. Finished up my high school. She kind of scattered my education all over the place. It was really difficult. We finally got out of that situation, I think, in 1990. I'm not really sure. Maybe at the end of 1989, 1990. Yeah, 1990, something like that. But most of the year 1989 was spent homeless. Listening to songs like Put a Little Love in Your Heart. And it's really hard to do that when you're in the situation you are. Dead Rats. My precious cat Boo, was with us during the time. I remember being evicted. I was at home alone when it happened. They come in. I have to take the cat. I have to put the cat in a backpack. I have to go over to my mom's job and say that we got evicted, so we're out on the street. We're completely out on the street. It was just weird. It was such a weird situation. Very cold, too. Very cold. And she was employed. She was gainfully employed. She had just started a new job that she would keep for how many years? About 10 years. So it was a really bad situation. No one looked at me once and said, hey, wait a minute, you're white. Instead of evicting you, we're going to give you these gold chains and watches, and there's a treasure chest filled with all kinds of trinkets and jewels because you're white. We're not only going to, let you stay in your apartment, but you get free rent forever because you're white, or something like that. I never saw that kind of treatment. Generally, privilege for me is money. I was surrounded by privileged people growing up. I mean, people who not only had close family, who often helped them out or whatever. My mom didn't. She kind of she antagonized her family. They disowned her. I can't believe I'm hearing music. Someone's playing a stereo very loudly. They must be. It's unusual. Or maybe someone's playing music, because this is a studio. We are in Studio 4. So it was really bad to be treated that way. You feel like a second-class citizen. And I can understand a lot of people being marginalized in that way, because I'm one of them. So that's why I say it's tough being the exception and not the rule. The rule is white privilege. The exception is me and many other people like me. If I'm not mistaken, a woman named Linda Tirado wrote a book. And the thing is, she grew up poor. She grew up with her, she got into a car accident. Her teeth were smashed in. She had no money to fix it. And then she wrote a book about her experiences and how difficult it was. But she still maintains that there is such a thing as white privilege. I don't know how she can even say that. Not only is she white, she's a woman. And the women have often been accused of getting preferential treatment over men. We take into consideration a woman's needs more than any other than a man's needs. So imagine that you're a white woman, but I guess the white balances it out, right? So she's a woman, but she's white. If she's a woman and she's black, then she is a total victim of whatever is going on. And this did not change. There were threats of eviction for years. Living with my mother, she is not exactly your dream tenant. I always learned to try and do things differently than the way she did. And I think I've actually managed to do a lot better than her. So it's like trying, every child wants to openly defy their parents and be rebellious. But usually you grow up in a very nice surrounding, the American dream. You go out to California, you do a lot of drugs, you get into a crazy commune full of lunatics, high on angel dust, meth, and MDMA and acid, and the next thing you know, you're murdering people in the Hollywood Hills. That's usually how it happens. I decided to go the opposite route of my mother, and I wound up doing a lot better than she did, but that's okay. We leave the city. I get married. I'm married. We have a child. We leave the city. We enter an arrangement renting a house upstate in Brewster. And, I start getting a bum's rush after I got laid off from my job. I informed my landlord that the money's going to be tight. And he acted like he wanted to help me out by selling me the house. He says, buy the house. It's cheaper if you buy it. Your payments will be reduced significantly. And when I told him I couldn't do that, he started putting pressure on me to leave, and then treating us. He took all our money basically and threw us out. And we have a child, so that's the and he wasn't white. That was interesting. He was Arab, I believe, from Egypt or something like that. But he has a crazy idea of white people in the United States. He thinks we're all rich. Like I said, I think I said in one episode, a homeless vet getting $300,000, and I've never seen $300,000 in my life. So I want to play a clip for you guys. This clip has already circulated quite a bit. This is back from October, from a town called New Brighton, which I believe is in Minnesota. And I guess you can hear the accents. It's kind of funny. It's a rather lengthy clip, so I apologize in advance for that. If you get bored, it's about 4 minutes. New Brighton, Minnesota, Mayor Val Johnson cried on camera because she was triggered when another member, Councilwoman Gina Bowman, decided to object to being told that she, along with other white people, have quote-unquote white privilege. This is back from October, and like I said, it's already been played a few times. I think I first heard it on Ben Shapiro, then I heard it on No Agenda. But this is really this really says a lot. This really seriously says a lot. Now, where the hell is the clip? Where the hell is the clip? Why can't I find the clip? Where? Oh, here it is. Okay. All right. This is the clip. Give it a listen.
Okay, we all have white privilege. We don't know what it's like to not have it, because we do. We go everywhere and we have that. We don't know the difference. We don't know what it's like to not have it. And I said, we can't do what, look at who's up here. We can't move forward as all being people of white privilege. We can't, because we don't know the difference of not having it.
Because I'm white, you think I was privileged my whole life? Are you kidding? I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. When they came here, my grandfather came, they didn't speak English, but they assimilated. But I resent that you think that I had white privilege. Everybody I work for or with is usually from another country. And they say to me, here's what they say, is we as Americans don't realize, and it doesn't matter what color we are as Americans, because I believe we are all Americans, is that we are privileged to just live here. So I don't want to think that this body doesn't feel that they can't represent people because they're white. And that, again, to me is just saying, I'm different because of color. No, I might be different because of culture, because of tradition, but those are the things that I think I always ask because I work with these people. I ask about their country, I ask about their families, I ask how it is, how they feel about America, all of that. That's how you get to know somebody. That's how you get to understand where they come from and where their opinions come from. But I don't think you can make such a broad brush and say that we've all been privileged or that we don't understand because we're white.
You are the exact reason we need this commission. If you don't understand white privilege, then you are not representing those people. You're not willing to listen to them. And what you have just said is the most racist.
Excuse me? Don't you ever accuse me of that. You have no basis to say something like that in public, and no basis to say something like that.
Then let me rephrase it. That statement was one of the most racist things I've ever heard.
What statement?
That you are offended by the fact that you're not feeling the white privilege thing. White privilege exists, and it is something that we need to accept in this country. In my opinion, you're interrupting me, and by golly, I'm running this meeting.
We're on camera, and you're accusing me of something pretty big here. It's unacceptable because you have no basis for it.
You're out of order. You're out of order. No, I have basis for it based on what you just said.
No, you don't.
Well, because you said hi to Bernard, you understand?
Oh, excuse me, I work with people. I probably know many more people of color than you do, and I work with them, so I do not want to have this argument with you, but you're
out of order.
And you're out of line.
Okay, fine. Let me just say this, that the discussion I just heard now makes me so angry. I'm shaking. You refuse to understand how other people in this community feel.
How do you?
But you refuse.
How do I refuse?
Because you're obviously not going to support this. You're obviously not going to support this. And what you're doing.
You don't know what I'm going to support, but I have a.
Quit interrupting me.
You're accusing me of things that are wrong.
Quit interrupting me. I'm going to finish my statement.
You can't see it.
What I heard
in the clip
was a racist statement. What I heard was a racist statement.
It's like it's a small table. It looks like it was recorded in a church, and it's like three women. The first woman who says there is white privilege. And then the second woman is disagreeing. No. I grew up in a poor situation, and no one ever gave me nothing. To quote Charles Dutton in Alien 3. And then the third woman, who is the mayor, just totally flips out and is shaking and is passionate and all that stuff. Basically.
Okay, Bill. Let's cut the bullshit. All right.
So that was Sidney Pollack and Eyes Wide Shut. I like that little bit there I threw in. So that's this is you know what this is? White privilege is not a systemic problem. White privilege is a systemic pathological condition that is being fueled by guilty white people who believe they've been given things. And I think it really comes from a psychological thing. Must be psychological. This is people people who don't feel they've earned anything are people who haven't earned anything and have been given. And a lot of people get a lot of stuff. A lot of people get a lot of stuff, so they feel bad about that, and they want to somehow contribute to what they deem as positive but is really negative. So it's a kind of a method of paying it forward, but from amnesia. And then white privilege is sort of like an original sin. It's something we cannot we can't clean our hearts of it. So we're all terrible people because of that. And it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate that people live that way, that people think that there's something wrong with them, and then there are other people who contribute to this. There is no past for being white. And I myself was a victim of affirmative action myself. I applied to some universities. I was told by my grade advisor, the pickings are pretty slim. You're not going to get a scholarship right now. They're handing out scholarships to minorities, and they're letting minorities get through. So that's the bottom line of it. Never received anything. Every job I ever had, I never made more than $30,000 a year. And I had the education and the credentials. My supervisors, my immediate supervisors, the people over me, tended to be middle-aged black women. That's generally those were who my bosses were. They were doing much better than me. They were homeowners. They got to they had certain privileges. If there is a privilege, it is the privilege of being an American. We are a part of the greatest experiment, and it still is, because it still hasn't been proven to be right, because we keep fighting over our system of economics. Once we've all agreed on it, then it'll be a perfect union, a more perfect union as written. And we are the beneficiaries of American privilege. Because look at our country and then look at other countries where, certain people of sexual orientation and color cannot even walk outside in the street. Certain people of certain genders cannot even walk out in the street. It's a dangerous world out there, and America certainly is the safest place to live. And we provide a level of comfort for our people that is unsurpassed, even by those who claim to have a higher quality of life. So let's all try to take that into account. I want to thank you for listening. This has been the David Lawler Podcast.